to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior. I'm excited to have on the show today Sue Matthews. Hey, Sue, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were just chuckling offline about the fact that you're located in New York. I'm here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. It seems to be outside of our doors. There's some construction going on. So let's just do this, and I'm sure it'll turn out great. So, Sue, this is really about you. Let's start off by having you tell us a bit about yourself.
I am the president of the Taylor Matthews Foundation, which is dedicated to funding pediatric cancer research and raising awareness. The foundation was started by my daughter Taylor when she was diagnosed with cancer at 11. Helping people has always been part of her legacy and my legacy. And this year I published a book called Paint Your Hair Blue, which is a continuation of her legacy to help others.
Well, that's amazing. Well, first, I want to honor you for all the things that you've said. And, you know, it is a difficult interview for somebody sharing internationally their story about the loss of somebody that was close to them. However, you've turned this into a purpose, and I was so inspired. I want to tell the audience a bit more about you, Sue, and how we met. I mean, we met through your book. So, first of all, my favorite color is blue. That's a true story. And the title of your book caught my attention, Paint Your Hair Blue. I didn't really understand what that meant until I looked closer. I read your book. I couldn't put it down. I mean, I had to reach for the Kleenex box a couple times. And it inspired me, and I thought, I want to interview you, and I want you to tell your life story and that life story, because it's going to help so many people. So I'm just looking at your bio, and I've seen a couple things that stood out. You know, a celebration of life with hope for tomorrow in the face of pediatric cancer. That's really the thread that runs through that book. Your daughter Taylor Matthews, I know we'll get into that story in a big way, and it was really about, you know, the fight and the courage, but the triumphs and the heartaches of that journey, which are very inspiring. I'm really taken back in a great way about how, you know, a mom and a family can have such strength through that period of time. I've known people who have actually lost young children to cancer, and I didn't really know the power of the family story until I read this book, so it's a gift. The last thing I want to say to build on the Taylor Matthews Foundation, which is interesting to me, is you do a lot of work, including with that foundation for research, but you lobby on Capitol Hill in America for additional pediatric cancer research funding and so much more. And you're a professional by background, and here you are. So, you know, Sue, this is about the hero's journey. It's about really the backstory. It's about our life and how great things become for us, but about the ups and downs along the way. So I'll just turn it back to you. Get us into that story wherever you want to start.
Well, Taylor was diagnosed when she was 11 years old, a complete shock. She was at school that day. I thought I was taking her out of school for an hour. We left her backpack in school. I thought it would be a routine exam. They did a chest x-ray and found out she was completely metastasized to her lungs. Her primary tumor was in her ribs. And she's 11 years old at the time, bugging me, Mommy, why can't I eat lunch and go to soccer practice? Before we had told her that she had cancer. So it came out completely out of the blue. I called my husband at work. He came immediately. And for some reason, we had the strength and the power to say 100%, we're going to fight this like the demon. They gave her a 3-month prognosis. She actually lived 5 years.
Wow.
And we had the ability to say to the doctors, no, we're not going to listen to you. They told us not to treat her. And we also had the ability to become, my husband and I, to become a synergistic team where I took care of her day-to-day needs when she was ill, when she was on chemo, and he did all the research. And in fact, all the research that he did, he went to work by day, a pot of coffee by night. This is throughout the book, strongly encouraged to get second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions, because the way the U.S. medical system works, all the hospitals don't have all the answers. And it was through all his research that she survived 5 years. And
Wow,
she took on I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say that's amazing. And I just wanted to make a comment. I'll do this quickly so you can get back into that. That I read somewhere in the book, and you can talk about it for sure anytime you want, which blew my mind about how little research money is put towards funding for this particular field. Maybe you can just touch on that, but take us back into the story.
Taylor, from day one, thought she was going to beat this. We always had faith. We never showed her our worry. She would refuse to let us cry, so the only place I could cry was in the shower. And most kids, younger children, believe that mommy and daddy are going to make it all better.
Yeah.
So she took the opinion, whatever she had to endure, chemo, radiation, 14 surgeries, was fine because it was just a passing phase. And she was going to do it, determined to live life to the fullest as she possibly could. And we got flashed from the medical system because we snuck out of the hospital. I taught her how to drive when she was 12, when she had no immune system. But every day was a different adventure. And she truly, truly celebrated every moment she had on this earth.
I mean, I started thinking in my mind and going on all these journeys about the word mindset as I was reading the book, which is so well written. I mean, it really puts you into the journey with the family. And the thing that I admire, and I just fell in love with Taylor, that was a big part for me, is that this young person with such, I realize young people have these resilient minds, Sue. I mean, they have the power to think positively because many of them, their minds aren't as polluted as as ours as we grow in adults and we're exposed to the outside world. But it really stood out for me that she had this innate gift of turning everything, I guess, lemons into lemonade, and her attitude. So talk about her a bit more in that area about mindset. When she was growing up, even before she was diagnosed, children come into this earth, and I believe they have innate personalities and the life around them. But some of them, they just happen to be positive and happy. Tell us about her. What made her that way, and take us into that moment when you had to tell her that she has cancer. How did you push your way through that mentally?
Well, Taylor, from the day she was born, was feisty, fun, full of bloom and energy. In fact, when she was born, I looked at the doctor. She had raw red scratches all over her face. And you expect this beautiful baby. And he said to me jokingly, she couldn't wait to come out of the womb. And that's how she lived life, as a force, completely. She would finish her homework when she was a young kid, finish her homework, finish her play date, and say to me at 5:30, Mommy, what should I do next? She never watched TV. I would tell her, ironically, I would tell her this because she ended up with cancer in her lungs, that she should run laps around the house, trying to tire her out for the evening ahead. So she was always filled with such a positive character. That was the day she was born. And in fact, the night before she passed away, we were in Germany seeking alternative treatment. And she said to my husband, am I making it back next week for a friend's sweet 16? She absolutely, even at that point, being on a respirator, thought she was going to beat this disease and was interested in going to a party.
Yeah, I mean, she left the world with a story. I really believe that God puts people in certain situations, as hard as it is to understand that, especially during such a loss, that people are given gifts to carry to the world. I believe that, I regret that she's not here to be on the show with us. We'll honor her with this show. There's no question this show will be a legacy for you and your family and the work you're doing. But that book itself will be a legacy to so many people. So I want you to talk about the family for a bit. And particularly, you mentioned your husband did all the research and then in the role you played. Talk about, how the experience was for you, the challenges, talk about self-care. What did you both do to stay strong and see this through? Because I can't even imagine what it was like. And take us through that part of the story, because I can imagine that there are things that you didn't write in the book that we may be just learning about now.
Self-care was really not an option. People asked me if I took a break and went to get a manicure. I didn't want to take a break. I didn't want to leave her in the hospital. My self-care was 100% seeing my daughter smile. If I saw her smile and I made her day happy, that was all that mattered to me. You get very used to not sleeping through the night because she's ill, whether she be in the hospital or at home. In fact, one morning we were in the hospital because when I did get 3 hours of sleep, I slept very soundly. One morning we were in the hospital and she couldn't get out of her hospital bed. And I was sleeping in a chair a couple of feet away and she couldn't wake me up. She was furious. She found wrapping paper and threw it at me. Mommy, wake up. I mean, I laughed. She's right here with us. I laughed thinking of the stories and the things that she did. So self-care was really very difficult at this point. But what was very important to me and what gets lost in families is I have 2 other daughters who are now 24 and 29. I would call them, and I do call them in the book, the lost siblings.
Yeah.
All the attention was based upon Taylor. She got all the gifts. She got mommy 100% of the time. I was a stay-at-home mom, driving my kids to school every day, not even carpooling because I didn't want to miss one moment with them. And suddenly they're thrust into a full-time babysitter, my other children, while worrying and watching their sister being sick. And when Taylor came home, they were so concerned about her being sick, and they were concerned about myself and my husband. To this day, my 24-year-old calls me every morning and says, Mommy, are you okay? I'm like, sweetheart, I'm fine. It's okay. I'm here to take care of you. And when we lost Taylor, I stayed in bed for 2 years, and what got me out of bed was my other daughters. Of course, my husband as well. But I realized their life can be as normal as it possibly can. My husband and I, our lives maybe cannot be, but we really encourage parents that have lost a child to pay attention to the other children. It's so important and so important to their health. A typical thing is even after you've lost a child, everyone says to the other children, how are your parents? They never say, how are you? Sibling grief is just not recognized.
No, I understand. What I should have written this down, and I apologize. What was the date that she left us? When was that?
Well, of course, she was born on November 1st, All Saints Day, that she absolutely loved. So she was born on 1/1/1, and we lost her on 2/2/2, February 22nd. And that is my little mathematician. I do believe in the 24 hours before you pass, 24 to 48 hours. You have a little bit of choice when you pass.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she picked that date. Those numbers show up in my life all over the place.
It's amazing. I mean, I was looking at your background. You have a BA in accounting, and the numbers make sense. But what year was it?
2008.
Okay.
So this February will be 11 years.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I want to talk a bit with you about mental health because you sent me in that direction in my mind. And I've spent a decade volunteering in mental health, and I've had experiences with it. You know, they talk about, people talk about the stigma, and I talk about getting a checkup from the neck up, that your brain is just another organ and we need to pay attention. The part about being in bed for 2 years and then, coming out of that, that obviously relates to, your mental health and wellness. And so give us any advice you can. Here you are on this treadmill, and maybe we'll call it adrenaline, or we'll call it, a purpose of just focusing all your energy for Taylor, which I totally would do if I was in your situation. I get that. But we forget about the self-care because it's not the priority. Afterwards, maybe we crash or we have that, that emotional turbulence. Tell us how you got through that. And the last thing about that I want you to tell us about is your early years as a young child and a woman growing up. I believe in a lot of the self-work I've done, that our upbringing, our wiring, our, what's in our brains and our subconscious, the resilience that we sometimes have to deal with difficult things in life also sometimes connects back to our early years. Tell us what you can.
Well, ironically, the reason why Taylor was diagnosed when she was diagnosed, because the pediatrician diagnosed her with exercise-induced asthma because she had a hard time in very aggressive sports. And The pediatrician rolled her eyes at me when I said I'm taking her to a pulmonologist, saying, Sue, you always overreact. And I wanted her to go to the pulmonologist just to make sure the medication, the dosing was correct. Why I say ironically is because I overreacted to every medical situation my children were in because my mother doesn't believe in doctors. She didn't take us to doctors. She died when she was 74 years old, never having a mammogram. And her reaction to Taylor having cancer was she doesn't have cancer. It's just a big business. They want to give her chemotherapy. That was very difficult for me as a mother to hear that from my mother.
Yeah.
But growing up, certainly before I got married and having children, she was a force. She taught us how to be a force, and she also taught us how to have fun in life and not let anything get in your way. Because she died at 74 young because she had emphysema from smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And she said to me the day before she died, if I had to do it over, I'd do it exactly the same. She was just all in. So that was how I grew up, and that's how it helped me. As far as, she was a little crazy, my mother, which is in the book. But that was all in good and fun.
Yeah.
And after Taylor passed, I mean, you would say to a person like myself, she lived out her diagnosis for 5 years and she was given 3 months. We knew it was near the end. You would say maybe I would be prepared for it. I was not prepared for it until she took her last breath. I still believe she would live.
Yeah.
So my immediate result was shock, anger, separation anxiety was tremendous. So fortunately, my husband, the day after she died, we were very fortunate that he was able to quit his job. He stayed home that entire 2 years and really took care of my other children. One of my daughters was a freshman in college, so we went to visit her every other weekend to make sure that she was okay. So I did get out of bed for that. I got out of bed for anything that involved my other daughters. And I just wanted quiet, alone time. I didn't know how to process the loss of my daughter. In fact, I used to touch my belly all the time thinking I gave birth to this child. How can I live with the death of her? But then I realized she would not want me to be sad. She would want me to live life the way she would want me to, the way she did live life. And I feel like she's right next to me. So I was determined to celebrate every moment that I have and for my family to celebrate every moment I have. And my big realization through many hours of therapy came to be that grief and joy can coexist. And you don't have to be guilty or sad for laughing or crying or enjoying yourself.
Well, that's amazing to me. I wrote down the word mindset, and you just nailed it. And I'm just so honored, and I'm proud of you for the courage that you showed and for sharing that publicly. I mean, it's got to be the hardest thing. And in our quiet moments, we have those dark moments. I totally understand that this was a private journey for you, but you brought it out into the world through that book. So I wanted to ask you now about legacy. I mean, a lot of people don't always understand that word. And I sometimes ask myself, there's so many people who have lost so many loved ones to cancer. And many people, they just go on with life, but unfortunately, life is never the same. And some people sadly don't make the journey. But others, they create something with it. They discover and define this purpose and this meaning to go out and change the world, to do something. I want to just relate to you a quick story and a commitment to you and to Taylor. Last year, I did my first ride to conquer cancer here locally. 150 miles on my bicycle over 2 days. I was invited to do it. It's something that happens every year in my community and across our country, we're Canada. But this applies in the U.S. There's so many things that are done to raise funds for research and to try to put a stop to this disease. And I remember riding that, and I just wanted to tell you this because you got my heart in this story, that we're at the starting line. There's about 2,000 bicycles. It's early in the morning. It's maybe the dawn, and we're at the starting line, and there's somebody on stage, and the cameras are running, and this person's telling their story, a personal story about a cancer. And then before they put the starting gun up and shot the gun to let us all go, they said, look to your right and look to your left. And they said, you see all the bicycles that have yellow flags? Well, the people on those bikes are either fighting cancer currently or they've lost somebody to cancer. And, my heart was in my throat. And as I was riding the race, I remember coming across people who were like 20, 30 years older than I am, seniors on bikes with yellow flags. I remember talking to somebody at one of the stations where we had breaks saying, "What's your story?" And hearing I'm in my 9th month of chemotherapy. And it really put life in perspective. The commitment I want to make to you and why I shared that story, because I totally understand that side of the journey, that needs to be more done, is that when I do this ride again, I'm asked to identify names of people that I can put on my jersey. And I'm going to commit to you and to Taylor that I'd like to offer to carry Taylor's name on my jersey, just as a support for your great cause. So what I want to hear from you is, before we move to wrap this up, Sue, is a bit about the legacy. There's this foundation, and I know it started during the journey. What do you want listeners to think about and do with what you've created here? And how are you changing the world with all that, to maybe find a better solution to this?
The foundation actually started within 6 weeks of Taylor being diagnosed. We found out that her treatment plan was 30 to 40 years old, and which is now 50 to 60 years old. No progress has been made in her type of cancer. The reality is that pediatric cancer is devastatingly underfunded by the U.S. government, receiving only 4% of the National Cancer Institute's budget, which is less than $200 million. And that is one of the reasons why I actively lobby on the Hill. And believe it or not, in the last 2 years, we have made some change. What we're trying to do is make adult drugs available for children. And the U.S. passed a bill last year making that process available. That is quite a process, because children metabolize chemotherapy and drugs very differently than adults. But that being said, we have made progress. I'm a mother that lost a child to cancer. What better could I do than help save other children with cancer, make Taylor's wishes, hopes, and dreams eternal? I feel so blessed that I was given her legacy for something to follow and live the life that she wanted. And if I could possibly spare one child, which I'll tell you are statistics, it means all the world to me. So at this point, we've raised $1.6 million, and the study we funded probably 4 or 5 years ago, that was essentially terminal, hit 15 to 18-year-old teenagers, and maybe you had a 5% chance of survival, which meant really that you lived 2 years. And we got results from the doctor now, the kids are out so many years, that 50% of the kids are surviving this disease. That honestly gives me the chills. I cannot believe we took a terminal illness up to 50%. Now, I'm not allowed to meet any of the children. I wish I could meet the families just to see their joy, but it doesn't really matter. They're survivors, and I want more survivors. I want children to be saved. And in addition to the foundation, we raise awareness tremendously about pediatric cancer and the fact that it's dramatically underfunded. And I personally help children with pediatric cancer, primarily in underprivileged families, where they may not be necessarily have the education they need or the source and the will to forge forward and knock heads with these doctors. So I've gone to many doctors' meetings for children, sat with many children in the hospital. Also, we run all our fundraising events are run by teenagers and young adults. And they say to me, when I thank them so much for volunteering, they say to me, "No, you're giving me the gift." It was so heartwarming. It was so wonderful to me. But my response that I get in the fall every year is, "I'm applying early decision. Can you write me a recommendation?" So to college. But anyway, so I help kids with that. I just was speaking to a young woman this morning about her getting an internship at the Ronald McDonald House, which is a safe house for children with cancer and parents that live out of state. So I help healthy children with their pursuit of happiness and their pursuit of their passion to help other children. So there are actually many venues that I do besides raising funds.
That's just amazing, Sue. I mean, I'm so excited about what you just said and honored that you shared that. And, I just want to tell you that there was a survey or a study that was done. It's a Canadian study. It applies, to North America, I'm sure. And it was done of 90-year-olds. And they asked the 90-year-olds, what were your 3 top regrets at this point in your life? And, the top 3, if I can remember them, were, I didn't take enough risk. Number 2, I didn't reflect enough. Number 3, I didn't make a big enough contribution. And I know from the work I've done that there's 2 human needs that we need to live. There's many human needs, but the 2 we need to live and feel spiritually full. One of them is contribution or service to others. And so I honor you and all in your family who are doing that. And so I want to honor you with a few words. I wrote these down as I'm interviewing you. These are not scripted. They're just from what I heard you say and a little bit from the book as I was reading it. Number 1 is you're a servant leader. Number 2 is love. It comes out of you. There's no question. Number 3 is resilience. I mean, gosh, what you've been through and what you're doing now, that's incredible. I want to turn it back to you as we wrap this up, Sue, and I'd like you to tell us how people can connect to you and where they can get your book and anything at all you want to share.
Well, thank you, Tom, for those words. I really appreciate it. And one of your words that you spoke out is love. Love transcended everything for Taylor. She honestly believed if there was love in her life, that was all she needed. And she held on to that her entire life from the day she was born until the day she died. You can reach me at www.taylormatthewsfoundation.org or www.paintyourhairblue.com.
That's awesome. Well, everybody, I encourage you to get this book. It's called Paint Your Hair Blue, A Celebration of Life with Hope for Tomorrow in the Face of Pediatric Cancer. And I recommend it's not just a book to read if you have that issue or have had that issue. It's a book that you can read no matter what. It's a great learning for life. And Sue, I want to also welcome you to the Quiet Warrior Tribe. We are inducting you into the Quiet Warriors. You'll be receiving, when we release this show, the challenge coin. And with that, you continue to commit to doing this great work. And as a special gift to you, and I want to announce this on the show, that I'll be sending you 2 coins, and one will be for Taylor. And I'm hoping that you can keep that in honor of her somewhere that's meaningful to you. So thank you for being on the show, Sue. Would you be open to coming back in the future and maybe we can just talk more about the journey?
Absolutely, Tom. And I just have to mention one thing. The fact that you're sending me a coin for Taylor, anybody reading her story, living her story, makes her alive for me, makes her present in my everyday life here. I will hold deeply onto that coin, my coin and Taylor's coin, tremendously. I really appreciate
awesome.
it.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you so much. Well, everybody, find the true purpose that you've seen in life as you see that Sue's done. Find that passion that keeps you moving forward, massive action to create the life that you deserve and desire. And check out this show when it's released on iTunes. Give it a rating to honor Taylor and the work Sue and her family are doing. And we'll see you again soon on The Quiet Warrior Show.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca